Good evening, welcome to the lounge. My name is Sakyi-Addo, and the lounge is broadcast from the Equator Bar at the La Palm Royal Beach Hotel in Accra. There's a phenomenon that we should be paying attention to, but which may not be receiving as much attention as it deserves. How fast our population is growing, which basically means how many children we're having and how that affects our quality of life as individuals and as families and ultimately as a country. You know, in 1950, Ghana's population was just a little over 5 million and was hovering around 6 million at independence. Now that's just a little over how many people are in Accra today on a working day. When President Rawlings took over power in 1981, there were 11 million of us. 20 years later, when he was handing over, Ghana's population had almost doubled. I don't know what happened. Maybe the early bedtimes occasioned by 6 p.m. curfews had something to do with it, if you get my drift. Well, today the head count is estimated at 25 million. And is projected to increase to around 36 million by 2030. That's not far away. Well, these may seem like mere numbers, harmless, innocent numbers, but they are not numbers. They are people. They are us. People who need clothing, who need to go to school, who need decent housing, who demand water and electricity, who generate thrash and sewage, who impact the environment. They will need to see doctors. That's the problem. So what's the solution? Adopt China's one-child policy? Put everyone on some dope that neuters the rabbit in us? Dr. Letitia Appiah, who heads the National Population Council, and who's also my gym mate, and Mr. Alex Bamful, who is a social marketing consultant and population evangelist, a pop evangelist. They join me for a conversation over drinks and finger food. Welcome to the lounge. So, Letitia and Alex. Letitia, how many children do you have?
3 girls.
3 girls. Okay. Planning on
No.
on getting a boy as well?
No, that's not.
No. Okay. Was that what you wanted? 3 girls?
Yes, 3. No, 3.
3. Okay. And all right. Okay. Alex?
Yeah, 4.
Population evangelist?
4.
4. Okay.
3 girls, 1 boy.
Okay. Are you done?
My youngest is 24.
Okay. Well, who knows? Are you done?
Yes, I am.
Did you choose to have 4?
Yes and no.
She chose.
Circumstances.
Circumstances.
So I have 2 sets of children, you know, from
Okay.
2 marriages.
Okay.
So it's 2 each, really.
All right. I've got 3. So between the 3 of us, we have what?
10.
10.
Now that's the, is that the problem? Well, let's say between the 6 of us, or 7, because of course we did this with partners.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, so why is this a problem, Letitia?
Well, thank you very much.
Does everybody agree it's a problem?
Not everyone, but I think that probably people...
You think it's a problem?
Yes, I think it's
All
a
right,
problem.
because?
I think it's a problem because, you see, the size of the population does not really matter. It is the structure. And by the structure, I mean those below 0 to 15. Because you and I know that those below 0 to 15, I mean those below 15 years, between 0 and 15.
Between 0 and 15.
Produce nothing, but they consume the most. They consume healthcare, they consume education services, educational services, the clothing at so fast intervals.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and for the children below 1 year, those who are even healthy, at least access the healthcare delivery services for immunization, even if for nothing. And they fall sick more often, you know. So they are a group that we need to invest in because they are the future of the country. So they need a lot of care, a lot of health care, not just the physical, but then also cognitive development, culturally developed, you know, so that they have values that will transcend and they can also give to their offsprings, you know. So the dependent group is critical. And the dependent group in Ghana currently, as I speak, yesterday there was a document launched, the Ghana Malaria Indicator Survey. And in that document, 15 and lower are 41%.
Yesterday, as on the 27th of July.
As on 27th of July, the Malaria Control and Ghana Statistical Service launched a book, a document, a survey report, the Ghana Malaria Indicator Survey. And in that document, 41% of the population are below 15 years. And it's increasing, actually, because if you look at the survey...
you mean the percentage below 15 years is increasing?
Yes, it's increasing. It's increasing, and that is where we should all be worried. It used to be 38.7 in 2010, when we had the last census. Another document in 2015 put it at 39.9, and this latest document put it at 41%, which is big, which means that those in the productive age, the 15 to 64, would have a challenge supporting this group. So it is the structure. You can have a family of 6, 2 parents and 4 children. If 2 parents, the dad is 25-year-old, the mother is 22 years old, and the children are between 1 and 4 or 1 and 6, compared to a family where the mother is, say, 36 or 37, and the dad is, say, 40, gainfully employed, with 4 children spaced. You and I know that the families, the outcomes of these children are different because even though the number is the same. So for population, it is really the structure. Those who are supporting the dependent group is critical. And that is what all developed countries look at. We compare ourselves to Malaysia. Malaysia has a population 0 to 15, about 27%. Meanwhile, we all started at 40 in the 1960s. Now it's 27.
We all started at 40.
Yes, with Malaysia, we all started at 40 in the 1960s, but consistently
40 as in it was 40% of the population that was below 15.
Yes, the population below, the total population, those below 16, those below 15 were 40% for both countries. Then they stayed on course with interventions for so many years, and then it came down, fertility came down, so then the dependent group also came down.
Did they do this deliberately?
Yes, they did it deliberately. You know, Kweku, what happened is in the 60s, when smallpox was eradicated, and then vaccines were produced, so babies were not dying as many as they used to because of the vaccinations. So vaccine-preventable diseases were manufactured, so the mortality rate came down drastically. And with decrease in mortality, there was no corresponding decrease in fertility. So that is where the problem is. So there's mortality decrease, but then the fertility is still high up. That is the issue. That is the biggest problem we have. So for us to have an optimal growth, mortality decrease should come with fertility decrease. Then the growth is optimal, and then we can develop economically too.
And how do we decrease the fertility, Alex?
Well, in 88,
what do we do?
We started with 6.4 total fertility rate. Total fertility rate is the number of children a woman in her reproductive age would have. 6.4. So a woman was having between 6 and 7 children.
When did you say this was?
1988.
Really? As recently as that?
Yes. We had a population policy that said that by 2020 we want to go down to 3. This is what, 2017?
Yes, we're almost there.
We had 4.2. We've missed it again, as we miss with all our targets.
But it did decline. It has declined.
It declined. And it declined because of interventions that happened between 88 and 2000. The big social marketing campaigns.
Of course, I have to mention that you're the chief executive of the Ghana Social Marketing Foundation.
Yeah.
You did a lot of work in
That's
that
right.
time.
So, but then we all forgot about it. Why? Because this program was being funded by donors. And I've always said, I can never understand how an outsider can love you more than you love yourself. Governments gave up and said, oh, you are interested, do it for us. These people do it and they get tired.
So the Ghana Social Marketing Foundation, which maybe can you just explain in a word or two what that was about? The work that you
basically
that
behavior
you did
change.
still do. Yes?
Behavior change, health behavior change. So getting people to change the behaviors which we accept as which are not acceptable to acceptable behavior.
For example,
the acceptable behavior, reducing your fertility.
By doing what?
Family planning, contraceptives. You know, people having voluntarily contracepting so that they can have the children they want. Space them properly so that the children will be healthy. And limit the number of children when they, you know, there are a lot of people you meet, they tell, oh, the joke is, oh, this is a pension baby. And then they will add, it was, you know, this one was an accident. Okay. There are too many accidents
Came
happening.
without a visa.
There are too many accidents happening. So we need to get, first, the population aware of what the problem is. Then they'll be willing to, you know, agree. There's also this whole thing.
So that was a campaign.
That was a campaign we did
in the 80s,
90s, up to the 2000s, early 2000s.
and then,
well, there was no money again. So, but then the feeling
this was funded by
donors.
international organizations.
That's right. Now, then the feeling was that we've done enough, but we have forgotten that those who were born in 90s are now in their reproductive age. And at the time when we were doing this, they were what, 4 or 5 years old? What did they care? Those who were born in 91 are 26 years old. So how old were they when we were jumping about and talking? I don't think it was, but now they're in reproductive age, and we've forgotten about them.
There was also the National Family Planning Program, which started in the 70s.
69.
Well, there we go. With Professor F.T. Sai, Professor Fred Sai, who is a world-famous specialist in this area, who worked in the from 69, as
That's
you say. My mother actually worked as a family planning field officer, going to rural communities and talking to men and women on market days.
Contraceptives,
about contraception and so on. So we dropped the ball.
Yes, you see, contraception is a category which you market. I must buy a particular, I want, say, oral health. Okay. I must buy the fact that I need to keep my dental health. And then when you go to the next step and say, by the way, you need to use a toothpaste, then it makes sense to me. But when you come and you start talking to me about toothpaste, it may sound interesting, but somewhere along the line, when I think I can't afford the toothpaste, I'll drop it.
Right.
Because I didn't really understand the impact of what I was supposed to do. That's exactly what we did. We didn't talk about contraception in relation to the population, the impact it would have on the population. It was left as an individual thing, you know. And then it even assumed moral issues, issues of morality, because you were talking about sex and other things, you know. I remember when we launched our campaigns in 93, you know, they preached against me in several churches. we're corrupting the young people. So again, I think we picked it from the wrong angle. But it was like, it was a group. So there was a group that was supposed to deal with the macro side, and we were dealing with the micro side. Somehow it got lopsided.
Kina Likimani says, there's absolutely nothing wrong with our population. We should simply empower citizens, give them more freedom and justice, and population growth will take care of itself.
Well, I don't agree with him. You see, if there's nothing wrong with our population, then why are we leaving Ghana and going outside? Yeah. There is no migration. Mauritians are not leaving Mauritius to this place. Maltese, those from Malta are not leaving Malta and coming to Ghana. So if we are that comfortable, why don't we all stay here? Why are we flooding the embassies for visitors to go out?
Are we going through the
How
Sahara?
are we going through the Sahara? Because people don't move from comfortable places to places that are not uncomfortable. You move from an uncomfortable place to a comfortable place. You know, so if they have had the number of children they can comfortably take care of, and they are living in comfort, and they are living longer, look at life expectancy. Life expectancy in those countries are longer than those in Africa.
Give me some comparative numbers. Say, I don't know, Singapore.
Singapore, the life expectancy is about 70 years. You know, and in Singapore, 1970, the population of Singapore was 2 million. 2 million. In 2010, 5 million, just 2.5 times. Kenya, 1970, 10 million, 2010, 40 million. Compare the economies. Compare that with the growth rates. You see, there is an indicator called the dependency ratio. The dependency ratio just measures, as I said, those in the dependent group against those in the productive group. Ghana, the dependency ratio is 76, which means that for every 100 people in the productive age, they support 76 people in the dependent group.
76 people are dependent on 24. Is that correct?
No, 76 people are dependent on 100.
On 100.
On 100 people working. In Malaysia, it's 48. So if 100 people are supporting 48 people in Malaysia, and 100 people in Ghana are supporting 76 people.
Obviously, the Malaysians
will have a better quality of life. Even if the number of people are the same, the fact that the structure is different shows that they would have a better quality of life.
Kweku, you see, when you talk
about
Europe...
a second. Who's got the best indices in Africa?
The best indices in Africa, the South Africans have better indices. Yeah. Mauritius is in Africa. Yeah. Mauritius has the longest, the life expectancy is 74, and is the longest in Africa. You know, and we started with Malaysia in the 60s. Malaysia was the first African country to have a population policy.
Malaysia?
No, not Malaysia. Mauritius. Mauritius was the first African country to have a population policy in 1958. The growth rate then was between 3 and 4. Population was 700,000. 2015, Malaysia is just 1.3. Mauritius is just 1.3 from 700,000. So you see the slow growth rate translates to better economy.
You see, Kweku, I was trying to say that if you take a look at the West, we have what we call replacement fertility, which is 2.1.
Yeah. And what is that?
That is the number of children who are born to women in reproductive ages. That just replaces those who are dying. So you have an equilibrium, so to speak. Yeah. You know, people die off, you know, so in most of the West, it's below 2.
Well, but
1 point, some of them, Germany is 1.3, some are 1 point, you know. It's the US that's about 2.5. Yeah. We've been struggling since 88 to bring it down to 3. We went down to 4, we've bounced up to 4.2.
And we'll be going up.
Okay. And the problems it has, Letitia was talking about the dependency people, the under 15s. Well, when we get to those, they eventually grow into the adulthood. Currently, if you take a look at our population, age 15 and above, 86.4 have education JSS and below. But
86.
Yes, 64.3 have no education or dropped out of primary school. So these people are going to grow. They are going to come into the productive ages. They have no skills. How are they going to support those who are going
children.
to come? Yeah.
This is the lounge. My guests, Dr. Letitia Apia, who has the National Population Council, and Alex Bamful, a population evangelist. Let's take a moment and toast to authentic whiskey. Let's toast to Johnny Walker, the original taste of whiskey. Since 1820, Johnny Walker has remained the world's #1 Scotch whiskey and has won numerous awards for excellence. This because the impeccable formula of distillation has been jealously guarded over the ages, thus its distinctive taste. Johnny Walker comes from an intricate blend of a wide spectrum of carefully selected flavors, giving it that unique taste savored by millions all over the world. So let's toast to the unquestionable taste of whiskey. Johnny Walker, the whiskey the world knows best. Johnny Walker, keep walking. Drink responsibly, not for sale to persons under 18 years and pregnant women. And before we began, we were talking about the implications of that for children with, who have stunted growth,
yes,
and what that means for their cognitive development. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, you see, Kweku, there's another document, The Cost of Hunger Africa. And in that document, it's 37% of Ghanaian adults were stunted as children, which just means they were malnourished. And if you are stunted as a child and you grow up to be an adult who is, from that, it means that if you are not careful, you will have offsprings who are also stunted, and most often worse than you, because you were malnourished, you were stunted, so you were not cognitively developed. Physically, you were probably challenged, you drop out of school and all that. So then what are you going to give to your child? So your child becomes worse off than you, and those children, because of that, most of them are low birth weight when they're when they are being born. They are preterm babies, and they use the facilities more often. So the mother is compromised. The mother or the parents don't have enough nutrition, they don't have enough finances, and they have to use the health facilities more. So then everybody suffers. The mother is in distress, that child is in distress, the health sector is in distress. They go to school, and it's also documented that they repeat more. They repeat more than those who are...
They struggle in school more.
They struggle in school more. So then they drop out, because if school is not interesting...
It becomes...
So it becomes a vicious cycle. It becomes a vicious cycle. And then they use fertility also to try and solve the problem, because in Cape Coast, you have girls as young as 11 who have been abandoned by their parents, and they're engaging in sex for something as common as a pad. So in the process they get pregnant.
Sanitary pad.
For sanitary pads. So in the process they get pregnant, they have babies, and the cycle continues. And we really need to stop it somewhere. Otherwise, we are all in real trouble. I think we should be focusing on the quality of people, not the numbers. Because I think the strength of any nation is not as much as in the numbers, but in the quality human resource.
One of the questions said we don't have a problem.
Yes, Kina.
Does he have a sanitation problem? Does he have a housing problem? Is there a food problem? Look, all these people we produce, we must house them. If you've been around Accra, I'm sure you've seen a lot of kiosk cities. These are people living in kiosks, which, by the way, are rentals. And, no sanitation, nothing. Okay, what kind of quality of life are they having, right? These are the people who eventually you find jumping your wall. when you think that you're okay, so you raise your walls, they will jump it. So we do have a problem. And the problem is that too many people are coming. We produce a lot of waste. Okay? The cities are not being able to cope with the waste disposal. There are taps.
But some would argue, though, that you've got countries, you've got China is 1 billion people, you've got the United States, 300 million people, and they manage their waste. So
Yeah.
why can't we
Well,
manage?
you said size matters. Yes. But you need to eat to get that size. China is producing. The US is producing. What are we doing? Are we producing?
Yeah.
I just quoted you those figures about our adult population 15 and above. We are talking about establishing factories in all districts. We may not even have the skill because the people are there. How many people can you put in a factory as factory hands? You need skilled people to work on the machines. They're unskilled.
Kofi Opariado sent this message. He says, allow me to repeat the cliche. It's the size of the fight in the dog and not the size of the dog in the fight that matters. The bottom of this debate drops out when you consider that Singapore and Nigeria are on the opposite sides of the size/prosperity spectrum because size is not necessarily a causation of prosperity. Correct? You agree?
I do. Because you need to back that size. You don't only need altitude, you need distance to be able to make it to the next level. So just having the numbers doesn't mean you're going to be prosperous. Because you have the numbers, you don't have the food. How are they going to?
Yeah.
You know, you have the numbers, you don't have the housing. You don't have the schools. You can't even cope with the health first because, because of that, they are using the health facilities ever so often that you are always out of pocket.
You see, the other issue too is that, you have the numbers, but there are some indicators, the teacher-pupil ratio, for instance, for optimal learning. You can have the best teacher with 50 pupils, Meanwhile, the optimal is there for contact. You go to Legon, there are 40,000 students, and the lecture halls are like stadium. So what effective learning can you have? My mom completed middle school, a trained teacher. When she speaks and writes, it's amazing. But now, the standards are so low. So those are the issues. We just haven't half-baked. You go to the hospitals here, and it's overcrowded. If one doctor is supposed to attend to 70 people, no matter how skillful the doctor is, you and I, your guess is as good as mine. The quality of care, the last 20 or so clients are going to be getting. Compared
Dr.
to
Victor Bampo says, sorry to interrupt you, says my brother, this is Victor Bampo, Dr. Victor Bampo, by the way, was Deputy Minister for Health until December. Says this is such an important topic. How well is the National Population Council working with the National Development Planning Commission and government to make the management of Ghana's population the cornerstone of our development? Who are the product champions? And he puts that into caps. The product champions who leading the charge at the highest levels of decision making, who have experts of high repute like Mr. Bamfo, who given the required resources can help make a difference. Are we using our people? By asking these questions, I'm turning the spotlight on myself too, speaking about himself, even though we know that in the long run, managing the population will make a huge difference. My 2.5 years as Deputy Health Minister was spent managing crises, Ebola, cholera, nurses' strikes, with very few opportunities to engage in the strategic and far-reaching discussions. This must change.
Well, I agree with him, but I think at times as a country we tend to be very reactionary. We should have short-term plans, we should have long-term plans, and we should learn to stay on course. Managing Ebola is important. Managing the strike is important. But then we should also, alongside that, have a population management strategy. We should have a population management strategy. And Ghana Health Service is one key such institution.
So do we have a population management strategy or not?
There is. But if you take a look at the 40-year development plan, you know, Victor was, he's a very good friend of mine actually, was alluding to how are you working
the National Population Council and National Development Planning Commission.
If you take a look at there was a Vision 2020,
Yeah.
population was one paragraph. Then you come to the current one,
The 40-year development
the 40-year plan. They are talking about what will be driving the plan. Nowhere is it mentioned, is population mentioned. So we've already lost the battle before we start. We'll be providing good quality education, good housing.
No, there are targets
How?
in there.
The people are just going to roll in and then we'll keep providing that. Why don't we start from the beginning of the conveyor belt and deal with the pace of the rolling?
So you
Supply
got,
side.
so you have a dinner. You have dinner with the president. Okay, so
Yeah, you know,
All right.
yes. In
so I'm
addition
president for the next 20 minutes.
yes, you see, in addition to all
Adu
this,
Sakyi-Addo.
in addition to all this, what I would want to say is that we have a document, another document, the Demographic and Health Survey report, and in that document, 17% of the pregnancies were unwanted. 17% of the babies we had, the women told us that they were
didn't want
them. They were all accidents, which
the
means
accidents. We are having
which
too many.
means that there's a big unmet need for family planning because abortion is so high, and I don't think that any woman would also want to risk her life, you know. Which means we are not making a family planning services easily accessible, easily affordable, and available, and that I can tell you is for sure. So yes, meeting the president now,
Yes.
what I'm going to say is that, yes, it is good that we have the one factory, one district, one factory. It's good. But population...
And free secondary education.
And free secondary education.
When
that
begins.
is the demand side of population. But we should be looking at the supply side of population. And by that, I mean that we should have family planning everywhere. For me, I put family planning at the level of immunization. My village has immunization centers. The women know when the public health nurses and the community health nurses are coming for immunization. And that is how accessible I want family planning to be. Mobile family planning clinics. Mobile with a schedule so that they know that every month in this village there is a mobile service with a driver, healthcare provider, and a health promoter. Housed or, I mean, yes, of course, by the district assembly or the traditional authority or whoever. But then they come. That is what Tunisia did. They come, they show the advantages of family planning, they show you the methods. They stay for about 3 days. You go back to your homes, you have a discussion, you come back the following day. If you want the service, the whole gamut of service is there. From the long term,
use audio visuals.
Use
and
audio
now,
visuals.
of course, with social media.
yes.
Instead of throwing about jokes and
all that, you know, use audio visuals and then the service is there. And for the family planning commodities, we have so many of them. We have the short-term methods, we have the long-term methods. At least these two should be available. We have the long-acting reversible methods, which can protect you for 10 years. I'm sure that if we had a shot for diabetes for 10 years, everybody would go for, you know. So then that is one aspect that we need to do. And then also the media should help us because demand creation is important.
That's what I was going
Demand
to
creation is critical. We have to create the demand. We have to talk about the advantages and the beauty of manageable family size. We have to make it enticing. We have to make it appealing to the population, you know. And then,
sorry, go on.
Okay.
I should go on. And then, so that is one.
Sorry, just
Sip something.
yeah, eat something. Alex is eating all the
He's eating
finger
more of
food.
finger food.
Now, we have so many radio stations, 400 and something at the last count. They all have morning shows, and all they talk is hard politics. When we have got hard social issues that we need to get them together, get them mobilized, educate them so that they can go and further educate. In every district that you go to, there are more churches than schools. People get up every Sunday, go and sit in front of the clergy and say, talk to me. So they are an important constituency who we need to rope in. So
the churches and the mosques.
The churches and the mosques. We need to.
The leaders of these institutions
that's right.
are influential.
They are very influential. If we spend all the time talking about in the media, doing what Letitia is saying, going to the villages, and the following Sunday, the Osofo stands up and said, all that is thrash, everything will vanish. So we need everybody on board who should understand that we are in the predicament that we are in now because we have too many people. It's not that people are not good, but we just don't have enough.
With the right structure, right?
Yes, with the structure, yeah. The structure should be maintained. You see, Kweku, I equate the structure of the population to the structure of the building. You know, the building has structures. If you want to build a story building, the structure is different. And if you don't get the right structure, the building collapses. Is that not what happens?
Yes.
So if we don't get the right structure for the population,
the right foundation,
develop the right foundation for the structure, developing economically is a big, big challenge. So we need to get the structure right.
This is the lounge. My guests, Dr. Letitia Appiah, who has the National Population Council, and Alex Bamful, a population evangelist. Let's take a moment and toast to authentic whiskey. Let's toast to Johnnie Walker, the original taste of whiskey. Since 1820, Johnnie Walker has remained the world's #1 Scotch whiskey and has won numerous awards for excellence. This because the impeccable formula of distillation has been jealously guarded over the ages, thus its distinctive taste. Johnnie Walker comes from an intricate blend of a wide spectrum of carefully selected flavors, giving it that unique taste savored by millions all over the world. So let's toast to the unquestionable taste of whiskey. Johnnie Walker, the whiskey the world knows best. Johnnie Walker, keep walking. Drink responsibly, not for sale to persons under 18 years and pregnant women. I have this message from a call Anaman in a Samankesi. He says, I was shocked to the marrow when I read recently that we started at parallel with Norway in the 60s in terms of population. That is around 4.5 million, but currently we are way ahead. Actually, in the 60s, it was about 5.2 million in the 60s. That's Ghana's population. And I'm told that Norway's population is about 10 million now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
10 million.
And it's the happiest country in the world.
Right. And ours is 25 million and counting.
And plodding on.
Yes. And Norway is the happiest country in the world. They have a contraceptive prevalence rate of 85. You know, which means what? Which means that 85% of their women in reproductive age have access to contraception, which means that they control their bets, which means they are having children, the children are wanted, and so then
ours
taking
is
care
22.2.
Yes.
That, you know,
the contraception rate.
And there actually is another
prevalence rate.
There actually is another correlation between contraceptive prevalence and economic growth.
Yes.
All countries above 25%, there's a direct correlation between that and their GDP growth. The higher the contraceptive prevalence rate, the higher the GDP growth rate.
Yes.
What role does religion play in all of this? Say Catholics.
Yes, I'm a Catholic.
You're a
Catholic. On Catholic. Yes.
What does your is it the father,
the Pope?
Not the Pope, but your own your church, where you go.
Christ the King.
This is contrary to the teaching of your church.
Well, not necessarily. You know, the Catholic Church promotes the natural methods, so it promotes family planning, actually. But I have a little issue with the Catholic Church with regards to family planning. I want you to look at a certain document. It's called the Humanis Vitae, and then there's another one, the Pontifical Committee on Birth Control, and that is a 1968 document. And in that document, that is where Pope John the 23rd or so asked some bishops to come out with the position of the Catholic Church on contraceptives. And it would surprise you to know that out of 69 people who sat and reviewed the contraception at that time, 64 said it was not bad.
And what does it say?
64 said contraception is not evil. That it's not evil, so people could use it. You know, apart from the Catholics, the method it's before 1930, all the Christians were against contraception. They thought that the natural methods were the best. But then in 1930, the Anglicans said, no, we think that using contraception was not a bad idea, so then they can use the methods that suit them. Then the Catholics in 1968 had this. It was 19... Pardon?
The encyclical from the Pope.
Yes, encyclical from the Pope. You know, so then they still said it wasn't bad. It wasn't intrinsically evil. But 4 popes, you know, in addition to the other Pope, Pope Paul the Sixth or so. That was then, because the first one died and the second one took over. So Pope Paul the Sixth said, I mean, he thinks that we should stick by that it is evil. But for me, I think it's more political than because family planning, it's why is the Catholic Church for immunization, for instance? Because God gave us immunity. So why are we harnessing the immunity God gave us? I think God gave us the knowledge to better our lives, you know. Everything we do is mimicking what God did. The cars we sit in, He gave us donkeys and we made cars out of them. You know, He gave us birds and we made aeroplanes out of them. So what is wrong with using contraception? Is it better, Kweku? If you look along the shore in Dodoa, children are being sold for 30 Ghana cedis. I think that should bleed anybody's heart. Because the women are having more children than they actually need. I have never seen a mother can take care of. You know, I've never seen a woman with 1 or 2 children sell one before. But you go along the coast and they have 6, 7 of them and they are selling them
10, 11, 12.
And they are selling them for less than a bowl of fish. You see, formerly they were having so many children, but because the mortality was so high, because the immunizations were not, so then you can get a woman with 10 children and 2 are left. Now it's not that way anymore. Because immunization is there, healthcare is available. So all 10 are living. And they are selling them and diving under the sea to untangle nets. In the Volta to untangle nets. Some of them are left on their own to practice prostitution. Is that what we want? Is that what God said? I think He says He gives us peace. For me, the ultimate for any human being is peace. And is that peace to the child? Is that peace to the mother? Norway is the happiest country in the world. Their contraceptive prevalence rate is 85%. So they are having children that they're looking forward to and harnessing their potential physically, emotionally, culturally, intellectually to benefit the nation. Is that not what we want? Look at the children we have on the streets.
See, we are struggling with our contraceptive prevalence. We go to 21, then we go back to 19, yes. Then we now come to 22. Nobody knows whether we are going to move forward. But even getting to that threshold of 25, which means that a quarter of your population, your women in reproductive are contracepting. We are struggling even to get there.
You see, Kweku, let me tell you some other staggering figures. The mortality rate, the maternal mortality rate. You go to Upper East, Upper West, it's as high as 800 per 100,000 live births. Mortality rate. And for every woman who dies, science tells us that there are 30 women with morbidities. Look at the fistulas that they have. Look at the renal failures that they have. So they are not dead, they are living. But what quality of life are they living? And if they are living this quality of life, what about their children?
How does that 800 compare to some of the better figures in Africa and elsewhere? So that
elsewhere, Africa, globally, the maternal mortality is 216. That is if they add all of us, ours. Ghana is 485, but then we have regional variations. You know, you go to some of the developed countries, Norway is less than 10. It's less than 10. That's what Norway has. Meanwhile, we started at the same time. In the 1960s...
What is it? Sorry, go on.
1960s, we all had the same slate. But then some stayed on course, some went off, and those who stayed on course...
Some dropped out of school, and some kept in school.
Yeah, sort of.
So
I think that's more like...
What kind of resources does the president... you're still talking to the president?
Yes, I'm still talking to the president.
You're talking to me.
I think that we need, the country needs to take the bull by the horns and accept that this is our problem and we are going to solve it. If anybody comes along and wants to help, they are welcome. But we live in our house and we are going to make sure we can feed our families, and so we are not throwing our hands up in the air, and anyone who comes in and says, I'll take care of that, we say, go ahead. So we must make provision for contraceptives. You'll be shocked to find out that contraceptives in this country, not a single one is provided for by the government. And if contraceptives as a mechanism for us to manage our population, it means we've already decided that it's not important.
So what kind of resources, does the president have to set aside for say the next 5 years?
Yeah, okay, cool. Let me tell you what Guatemala has done. Very interesting. You see, when we drink Johnny Walker and alcohol, what do?
You get drunk? You
get drunk, and then what else? Yeah. So then what Guatemala has done is they have advocated for part of their alcoholic beverage tax to support family planning. So it supports family planning and also supports the alcohol rehabilitation centers, which I think makes a lot of sense because they got drunk and then ended up there, so at least part of the tax...
They went to misbehave.
And they went to misbehave, So that is what they have done. So then they have constant funds for family planning, So we can also start thinking about that. Alcoholic beverage, part of the tax, because there's so many adverts on the telly
these days,
for alcoholic beverage.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Okay. All right. So anything else?
So we can do that for tax. And then also, as Mr. Bamfo said, the religious leaders. 70% of Ghanaians are Christians, another 15% are Muslim. So if we can get these two, we are in good business. What Senegal has done with the Islamic community, they have an imam in charge of family planning.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and they have a group of family planning imams and who have been trained, and they talk about family planning in the mosques every Friday, and uptake is coming up.
Okay.
So those are some of the things that we need to do. We need to create the demand, we need to have service provision, and the environment should be enabling. Environment should be warm, and of course, the men should be on board, the traditional rulers, the queen mothers, and the churches.
Okay.
You see,
final word, Alex.
We are sitting on a time bomb. The earlier we wake up and dismantle this time bomb, the better it will be for us. Our population is bursting at the seams. It's not that we don't have the land space, but we just don't even have the money to look after the few that we have. We can't provide enough water. We can't provide sanitation. We can't provide housing. We can't provide enough schools. Take this free SHS that is going to come. The unintended effect is going to be people are going to say, oh, then we are going to have more children because the school is going to be free. It happened with the free maternal care. They were saying that, oh, okay, so now free maternal care, so I can have more children. So we need to educate our people to understand what good quality life means for themselves and their children. We need to get them to change the narrative. This narrative is not good enough for us. We must change this narrative.
Thank you, Evangelist Alex Manful and Bishop Letitia Pierre. Population Bishop, Population Evangelist. I learned something. Hopefully you did. And hopefully even the president learned something. Hopefully some action will be taken by everyone.
Sure.
Thanks for watching. Good night. See you next week.
The Lounge, proudly brought to you by Johnny Walker. Keep walking.